New Year. I now call to order the January 13th, 2025 meeting of the East Penn School District Board of School Directors. Will you now all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item on the agenda is listed as the EHS SGA report. We got our signals crossed, and that will actually be 2 weeks from tonight. So next item, our request to comment. There are none. So I'll now move on to the approval of minutes for the December 9th, 2024 regular board meeting. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any comments or questions from the board? Okay, seeing none, Ms. Allen, please call the roll.
Ms. Bowman.
Aye.
Ms. Ford.
Aye.
Mr. Jankowski.
Aye.
Mr. Kelly.
Aye.
Ms. Klotz.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Dr. Whitney.
Aye.
Dr. Levinson.
Aye.
8 ayes.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Next item on the agenda is the district update. Dr. Campbell.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope our community and our school board had a great holiday break. I'm excited to share that January is School Board Member Appreciation Month as supported through PSBA. And so we'd like to take this opportunity tonight to celebrate the work of our school board directors and all that they do for our school community. We certainly recognize the complex responsibilities of school board and all the work that you do in terms of adopting new curricula and programs, policy, budgets, as well as hiring. As locally elected officials, our school directors are invested in their communities and our students' education here in East Penn. And on behalf of our district administration, all of our staff, and our students, I wanted to take this moment to express our gratitude to our amazing school board members here in East Penn for your dedication, time, and efforts. And you probably noticed, school board members, at your seats, you have some special messages from our kindergarten students in Mrs. Ziegler's class at Willow Lane Elementary. They have some special messages that they've prepared for our school board members to thank you for putting your hearts into our school district and to remind you that you're not your average school board member. So great messages from our kindergartners at Willow Lane. And again, on behalf of our school community, thanks for your commitment to East Penn. I would like to, switching gears a little bit, talk about an upcoming important event here in the school district. This Wednesday evening, January 15th, Emmaus High School is hosting their 8th grade family welcome night. So this is the first of many orientation or transition sessions that we will hold for the 8th to 9th grade transition here in the East Penn School District. So this Wednesday, January 15th, starting at 6, the high school will be hosting that information session for parents and students currently in 8th grade, either at both Ayer as well as Lower Macungie Middle School. If you please check the high school as well as the district website, there is a schedule. We ask that you come. The first half of the alphabet comes at 6 o'clock. The second half comes at 7 o'clock, but there is opportunities then for a self-guided tour. We'll have some of our Hornet ambassadors as well as representatives from the various departments at the high school who will be present. It's a fantastic evening, great opportunity for both students and families to begin that really exciting transition from middle school to high school. I'd also like to remind our senior citizens that registration is open for our community education classes. Information is available on the district website. We have art classes, we have yoga classes, and we also have swimming. And so I encourage our senior citizens to check out those great community ed opportunities. I'd also like to recognize all of our students who are competing as part of our winter athletic teams at both the middle as well as the high school. In particular, as we come off of our winter break, many of our high school teams participated in holiday tournaments and really did a pretty amazing job. Our girls basketball team won the Easton Holiday Tournament over the break. I believe it's the first time in the history of Emmaus High School that our girls took first in that tournament. They have a pretty amazing season happening. They're currently 13-1. Our swimming team, the boys finished up runner-up at the State College Quad and the Cumberland Valley Invite, and the girls also were the runner-up at the Cumberland Valley Invite. So great job to our swim team as well. Our girls wrestling recently placed second in the Parkland Dual Tournament. Again, that happened over the holiday break. We're so incredibly proud of them, especially being a sport that's so newly formed. And I also wanted to mention this Wednesday night is youth night, and our girls wrestling program will compete against Parkland in our main gym. So the high school is going to be a hopping place on Wednesday. And finally, boys wrestling, wrestler Jackson Max took first place in the Hurricane Tournament. Again, that was held over the winter break, so great job to Jackson as well as all of our boys wrestlers. And this Thursday is youth night against Liberty here at Emmaus in our main gym as well. In addition to our student athletes, I'd like to recognize our students at Emmaus High School for their outstanding academic performance. Just recently, the high school debate team earned the title of Eastern PA Conference Champions. And our high school academic team defeated Nazareth in the semifinals, and they defeated Parkland in the finals to earn the EPC Scholastic Scrimmage Championships. And they're going to be advancing to the national competition that will be held in May, so great job to them. This evening, the board will take action on a $10,000 donation from the Lehigh Valley Educators Credit Union. This is part of their business development program. These funds, we anticipate that we will be using them to support implementation of the STEEL standards here in the district. And speaking of donations, I also wanted to mention to the community, you likely know that annually the school district receives a donation from the Giant Food Company as part of their Feeding Kids Roundup program. For those of us who shop at Giant grocery stores, you likely know that now through March 31st, when you check out, you have the option of rounding up your order to the nearest dollar, and it's that roundup that it actually then becomes part of a match donation through the Giant Food Corporation that comes back directly to the East Penn School District. So I just bring that to our community's attention. And finally, while we're excited for our students to be back in session, we did just want to highlight that schools will be closed again on Monday, January 20th, in observance of Martin Luther King Jr. Day. So next Monday, our schools will be closed. That's all I have for tonight. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Campbell. Are there any comments or questions from the board? All right, appreciate that update. Moving on into the next item on the agenda, there are two personnel items, A and B. If there are no objections, I'd like to take those together. And I have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any comments or questions from the board? Okay, seeing none, Ms. Allen, please call the roll.
Ms. Ford,
Aye.
Mr. Jankowski,
Aye.
Mr. Kelly,
Aye.
Ms. Klotz,
Aye.
Mr. Smith,
Aye.
Dr. Whitney,
Aye.
Ms. Bowman,
Aye.
Dr. Levinson.
Aye.
8 ayes.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Allen. I would just like to call attention that we did approve the new administrative compensation plan for the next 3 years, and I just wanted to recognize our appreciation for having fruitful discussions with the administrative team for putting together an agreement that recognizes their commitment to serving the district. So again, I appreciate that very much. And before we move on, I think Dr. Campbell has some comments she'd like to make about what we just approved for personnel.
Yeah, I have two additional comments to make regarding the personnel section of the agenda, one of which is the board accepted the retirements of 6 dedicated East Penn employees, again, most of which will happen at the end of this school year, but in particular, those 6 individuals collectively have 138 years of service just in East Penn. Many of them have many years of service in the field of education in other school districts as well. So I wanted to give a special recognition to Karen Coyote, who will retire. She was a teacher at Shoemaker Elementary for many years. I recall actually when I began my career as a teacher in East Penn at Shoemaker, Karen and I were on the same grade level, and she's now an elementary teacher at Macungie Elementary. Heather Day is retiring as a family and consumer science teacher at Emmaus High School. Deb Kaplan will be retiring as a special education teacher at Lincoln Elementary. Jason Palmer, again, also retiring as a special education teacher at Ayer Middle School. Sue Sturkenberg retiring as an elementary teacher at Albertus Elementary. And Andrea Bray is a staff assistant who will be retiring from Emmaus High School actually this month. So again, almost 140 years of service just to the East Penn School District. Amazing commitment and dedication to our students, so I wanted to wish them well also. In addition, under the personnel section, we're excited to share that the board just approved the hire of Kyle Fields as our Assistant Director of Facilities. We're pleased that he's currently a member of our East Penn team. He will be transitioning from a maintenance position, currently serving as our electrician. So we're going to put a plug, no pun intended, we're going to put a plug out there for to watch for that posting for an electrician, critical position in the district. But we're really excited that Kyle will be making that transition to be part of our leadership team, working very closely with Mr. Anushko and his great maintenance staff. And so I do invite Kyle to come up, as we do with all of our new administrators, and just introduce himself and come around to each board member. Congratulations, Kyle.
Congratulations.
Looking forward to it.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, welcome.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Campbell. Next item on the agenda is business operations. I'm going to take these items in two separate motions. The first motion, I'd like to take items A through G together. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any comments or questions from the board? Okay, Ms. Allen, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Ford?
Aye.
Mr. Jankowski?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Ms. Klotz?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Dr. Whitney?
Aye.
Ms. Bowman?
Aye.
Dr. Levinson?
Aye.
8 ayes.
Okay, before moving on to the next motion, I would just like to reiterate recognition to the Lehigh Valley Educators Credit Union for their generous donation to the district. I'd next like to take a motion for items H and I together. Before I ask for that, I do want to make a note that there was a typographical error in the agreement for item I. The error was on pages 6 and 10 on the refuse and recycling contract. It should read 36-month contract, not 34 contract. Correction has been made and has already been uploaded to the public content along with the same note. With that, I may have a motion to approve items H and I.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, are there any comments or questions from the board? Ms. Bowman?
Yeah, this is sort of a tangential question on item I. I was really pleased to see the savings that we, in the previous, sorry, it's sort of a complicated question. In the previous item, I was really pleased to see the energy savings that we had at one of the elementary schools from putting these into practice. And then when I got to item I was wondering if we are trying to do anything to reduce the amount of refuse that we put out there to try to see savings in this area as well.
I can follow up with Mr. Anushko and his team to respond,
Okay.
to get a response for you. In essence, I know that part of the increase is really just a flat increase in the service itself.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
it's just
Yep.
tangential. It's mostly because I saw how much savings you found making the other improvements, and I was just curious if there are things that we can be doing to reduce the amount of refuse that we're putting out there to try to save some money in this area as well.
Okay, thank you for that question. Any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, Ms. Allen, please call the roll.
Mr. Jankowski?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Ms. Klotz?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Dr. Whitney?
Aye.
Ms. Bowman?
Aye.
Ms. Ford?
Aye.
Dr. Levinson.
Aye.
8 ayes.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. And just a reminder, item J is informational. It's notification of advertisement for bid. Okay, next on the agenda is curriculum. Item A is up for approval for educational conferences. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any comments or questions from the board? Dr. Whitney?
Yes, just one of the items on the conference list here that stood out to me and I had to do a little research on was the House Mania Conference. And I was wondering, given that that's seeming a larger expenditure than we typically grant for conferences, and I'm happy to approve it, but I would love to learn a little bit more about what that conference is. It seems like we're sending a lot of our senior administrative team there, so I'd love to hear a little bit more about it.
Yeah, you may have recognized, and I appreciate the question, there's actually quite a diverse team of administrators, some professional staff members as well who are planning to attend that. This is work that we are doing in preparation for our K-8 realignment. The board likely recalls, or I should say, like, during our initial presentation that we made probably well over a year and a half ago. So I appreciate there's a lot that has happened in between that time. But one of the discussion items was about the projected enrollment at each of the two schools, the 5-6 building and the 7-8 building, and the overall student enrollment and or perceived concerns with size of the building. And so the philosophical approach for which we were planning was really taking a look at a house or a team model. And so this professional development opportunity is to take a core team of individuals who have been involved in that K-8 planning at both the 5-6 and the 7-8 level to go to an organization that kind of specializes in that house model so that we can go and learn best practice and then certainly bring that back as we continue with our planning for the K-8. And so I do anticipate that you know that our next public presentation with regard to the K-8 realignment, at which we're going to talk more about program, is planned for February. So this session, this conference, this opportunity, I should say, this learning opportunity is not until after that. But certainly you'll hear more about that continued planning as we do future presentations. So I appreciate the question.
Sure, thanks for the explanation.
Okay, thank you for asking that, Dr. Whitney. Any additional comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, Ms. Allen, please call the roll.
Mr. Kelly.
Aye.
Ms. Klotz.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Dr. Whitney.
Aye.
Ms. Bowman.
Aye.
Ms. Ford.
Aye.
Mr. Jankowski.
Aye.
Dr. Levinson.
Aye.
8 ayes.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Item B under curriculum, and we're going to get a presentation on the 2025 to 2028 comprehensive plan. Dr. Campbell, would you like to introduce?
Yes, I'm incredibly excited to introduce tonight's presentation of our comprehensive plan. As a very brief bit of background for the board and the community, every 3 years, the Pennsylvania Department of Education requires that each school district submit a comprehensive plan as part of their long-range planning process. So I want to say in East Penn, this process is far more about meaningful identification of needs and priorities for the community and the organization and strategically planning and addressing those priorities. It's far more about that planning piece than PDE compliance. But it is certainly something that all school districts are expected to do. You'll hear tonight that our comprehensive plan outlines our goals and action items that are to be completed over the next 3 years by East Penn to ensure that all of our students, that all learners are achieving at high levels, are experiencing success both academically, socially, and emotionally. Throughout the first semester of this year, we had approximately 40 stakeholders who worked as part of our comprehensive planning steering committee. You'll hear from many of those leaders this evening. We have representatives that include students, teachers, administrators, parents. We had several school board members who served as a part of that process. The team met several times in the first half of the school year. We reviewed our comprehensive student data. We'll give you an overview. The board and the community will present an overview of that data with you this evening. In analyzing that data, we then also took a look at our current comprehensive plan, the one that is in effect until the end of this school year, to identify in what areas did we meet the current goals, what goals do we anticipate we need to continue to have as priorities for the organization, and what perhaps action steps do we need to adjust. So we'll then talk about priorities, goals, and action steps that we've identified. Tonight, you do have members of the steering committee. We're incredibly grateful for their leadership and willingness to not only be involved in the commitment to the process, but also to come forward as representatives tonight and share their great work with you. And I just want to share with the board in terms of the process that will follow. Tonight is informational only. After this evening, we'll then post the draft comprehensive plan on the district website. It will be on there for about a month. We encourage families, community members to take a look at the comprehensive plan. We'll have a process at which feedback and questions can be shared. And then our plan is that we will certainly consider that feedback, determine if there are any adjustments to be made to the draft plan, and potentially bring the comprehensive plan back to the board for action at a future board meeting. Tentatively, that would be in the second board meeting in February. Ultimately, we then will have to submit the plan by the end of March. So again, just really wanted to set out the process in terms of tonight is informational only. And so at this point, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Mahalik, who's one of our supervisors in the Office of Teaching and Learning, and he's going to get us started again. Specifically, we're going to take a dive into a summary of East Penn student performance data.
All right, good evening. We are happy to be here tonight to share and celebrate our academic data from the 2023-2024 school year, and we have a lot of great data to share with you. All right, to set the stage for the presentation, we're going to follow a format that is very close to last year's format. We're going to show you each individual building's building score, and we're going to show you proficiency and growth data through 2 publicly available data sites. This is how anyone can access school data, and that includes the PVOS Public Access and then also the Future Ready PA Index. Just as a refresher, the Future Ready PA Index shows us proficiency and growth measures in the state assessment measures, also some non-standardized data points as well. And for PVOS Public Access, this is where we mainly see a lot of growth. And it's very important to consider both proficiency and growth together when you're making a lot of data-informed decisions and looking at how our schools are doing overall. Just to give you a highlight of some of the data points we're celebrating tonight, every school exceeded the statewide average in every tested subject area. Growth data is extremely encouraging, with almost all of our schools and grade bands meeting or exceeding the state's growth goals. And overall, you're going to see very high performance when you compare our schools to other schools, both demographically alike and in the Lehigh, Northampton counties. So to interpret or help interpret the way that we're going to show the data, this is how we're going to communicate every different school in East Penn School District. You're going to see in the top left-hand corner that we have the building score. Dr. Gutman is going to explain a little bit later how that number is calculated. And then you're also going to see the data from the Future Ready PA Index. There are 2 rows. The top row shows proficiency, and growth is on the bottom row. Obviously, you see colors, and the colors are definitely worth explaining. So if you ever see a red, that means that the school did not meet the interim target goal as determined by the state. Now, what that means is that the state set a goal for 2033. And if you look at the top row, there's 3 different bar graphs. The bottom one is the statewide 2033 goal. Every year, the state kind of increases that benchmark so that all schools eventually get to that standard in 2033. Red does not necessarily mean bad. It just means the school failed to come, to reach that interim target. So for instance, you may see some schools that they had 70% of students that were proficient on an ELA, on the ELA exams, and that would show red because it didn't meet the interim goal of 70.3%. I just want to make sure that that's very clear. The 3 different tested subject areas, we have ELA on the left, mathematics in the middle, and then science on the right-hand side. So the data that you're going to see today for all schools except Emmaus High School is reflective of performance last year. When we get to Emmaus High School, I'll explain how that one's a little bit different. So to start with our elementary schools, Albertus Elementary had a building score of 75.3. While Albertus did not meet the growth goal in math or science, they met the growth goal in ELA. And students also met the interim proficiency target in ELA and math while meeting the 2033 statewide goal in science. Jefferson Elementary had a building score of 74.5. Jefferson Elementary met the interim proficiency target in science, but did not meet the interim goal in ELA or math. However, Jefferson met the state's growth goal in all 3 subject areas. Lincoln Elementary had a building score of 78.9. They exceeded the proficiency goal in science, did not meet the goal in ELA or math. However, they also met or exceeded the growth goal in all 3 tested subject areas. McCungie Elementary had a building score of 83.1. They exceeded or met the proficiency and growth goals in all 3 subject areas. As did Shoemaker Elementary, had a building score of 89.2. Again, they met or exceeded the state proficiency growth goals in all 3 subject areas. West Coastville Elementary held a building score of 78.4. They met the 2033 statewide goal, the statewide goal in science. They met the interim goal in math, but they did not meet the goal in ELA, but they met or exceeded the growth goal in all 3 subject areas. Willow Lane Elementary had a building score of 84.8. They met the statewide 2033 goal in science. They met the goal in math. They did not meet the goal in ELA, but they met or exceeded the growth goal in all 3 subject areas. Lower Macungie Middle School had a building score of 78.6, which is the same as Iyer Middle School, which puts both of them at the top of Lehigh and Northampton County Schools. So just to reiterate, as a reminder, just because we see red does not mean bad. This is, you're seeing right here, the highest performing, at least according to the building score in Lehigh and Northampton County. And while we did not meet those interim proficiency goals, you can see that we met or exceeded the growth goal in all 3 subject areas. And like I said, with Iyer, also at 78.6 at the top in Lehigh and Northampton counties, and similarly did not meet the interim growth goals in the 3 subject areas, but met or exceeded the growth goals in those 3 subjects. For Mays High School, this one's a little bit different. Hopefully this is the last time that I ever have to explain this. So this is showing us, in the top left-hand corner, you can see it says school year 23-24. That refers to the juniors in 23-24, which would be the current senior class. So this is showing you how the whole cohort did regardless of when they took the Keystone exam. For ELA and for science, it's pretty accurate. All of those students took the Keystone as normal. They were not impacted by COVID. But for algebra, this does not include students who were given a non-numerical proficient score in the year 1920. And if you go back in 1920, our students who would have been taking Algebra 1 in 7th grade were part of this cohort. So when you look at these numbers, just remember, this does not include, and we have a pretty significant population of students who take Algebra 1 in 7th grade. It does not include them. It only includes the test takers. So on that note, if you look at the top row, you'll see that our proficiency, even for those students who do not include the non-numerical proficiency scores, a very strong group of students, our students still did better than the statewide average. We met the interim goal for ELA, did not meet it for math or science, but you can see that we met or exceeded the growth goal in all 3 subject areas. So overall, you saw tremendous growth on that bottom row in all 3 subject areas across the East Penn School District. Now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Gutman, who's going to explain that building score and the challenge multiplier.
Good evening. Under Act 13 in Pennsylvania, the challenge multiplier is a component used in calculating the building level scores that Dr. Mahalik just shared with you. These scores are a part of the principal and teacher evaluation. The multiplier adjusts scores to account for factors beyond the control of educators, ensuring a more equitable assessment of school performance. When we're looking at the challenge multiplier, it is calculated based on demographic and contextual factors that are statistically correlated with student achievement and student growth. These factors will include low SES, economically disadvantaged, special education, multilingual learners, the school size, and other factors such as absenteeism. We compared East Penn with districts that have these similar demographics as us in regards to economically disadvantaged, special education, multilingual learners, etc. When we did this comparison, you can see our elementary building scores ranked amongst other demographically alike schools based on this challenge multiplier. And you can see our schools highlighted in green. Bear with us on this size of the font here, but we wanted to show you the difference here. On the left depicts where our elementary school building scores rank in both Lehigh and Northampton County. And the graphic also helps to take you to zoom back to see what it looks like a little bit closer, that you can actually read it. So those are all the schools on the right, and then we zoomed in so that you can see East Penn. Again, in using the challenge multiplier, here you can see our middle school building scores ranked compared to demographically alike middle schools. And here, again, just as Dr. Mahalik said, you can see the middle school building scores ranked based on districts in Lehigh and Northampton County. And our two were at the top. On this slide, you can see building scores ranked based, again, back on the challenge multiplier for Emmaus High School compared to demographically alike high schools. And then lastly, you can see Emmaus High School's building score compared to other high schools in Lehigh and Northampton County.
Good evening. So next up, we want to talk about our PVAS data. So while PVAS was part of the overall school score as our other publicly viewable data point, we wanted to take some time to examine it a little bit more closely. So just as a reminder, PVAS is a growth measure, as Dr. Mahalik shared, not a proficiency measure. So one of the major reports that we pull from PVAS is a value-added report. And this value-added report is a statistical analysis used to measure academic growth of groups of students and then the ultimate influence that districts and schools have on their learners. This is an important data point for us because a student or a grade level may have below target proficiency, but high growth. While proficiency tells us where our learners are, the growth data shows us how far we've moved them. And that's really critical information when it comes to decision making. So I'm going to start with our ELA growth measure. The top of this chart shows our 2023 scores. So that's the data that we presented to you at this time last school year. And then the bottom of the chart shows our 2024 data. So that's the data that was collected during the spring of last school year. I also want to just point out, because sometimes we do get this question, so while third graders are assessed, it is the first time that they're taking the state assessment, so you won't see a growth measure for them because there would be nothing to compare it to. So as a district, overall, all of our grade levels in ELA were considered well above, and that means that all of our grade levels scored well above their predicted growth indicator. So that's, again, when it's talking about well above, that means they were predicted to score in this way, and they scored either above or well above that. If they hit that indicator, then it would have been considered meets. This is something we're really proud of, obviously, but with growth like this, we also then want to keep an eye on proficiency levels, because it would be our hope and our expectation that as we're seeing growth like this, that we would ultimately be filling pre-existing gaps. So we would like to see our proficiency levels rise as this growth would indicate it should. And then as part of our last comprehensive plan, we made a commitment to more carefully examine data points by subgroups. So we're also sharing all of our PVAS data segregated by subgroups. So overall for ELA, the majority of our subgroups at least met the anticipated growth indicator, and some also rated in the well above category. And now Dr. Thatcher is going to turn our attention to math.
So what you see here on this slide is similar to what Dr. Murphy had described with the ELA. On the top, you see the chart for the 2023 growth for our groups in grades 4 through 8, as well as across all grades. And then the chart on the bottom is from last year, 2024. You'll note that most of our groups either meet or are well above their target growth. One thing that I do want to point out is that we took note that our 8th grade group in 2024 was well below their target growth, and so you will see in the next segment of the comprehensive plan update, there are many action steps listed that are built to designed to support movement and improvement in that areas. We've had a lot of turnover in that particular grade level in the last few years. And again, we do continue to celebrate that across all grades, as a district, we continue to see well above the target growth rate in math for grades 4 through 8. On this slide, you see the math growth data by subgroup. And so similar to ELA, we're proud that we are meeting above and well above the target growth for our subgroups, as that was a very particular piece of our comprehensive plan in the last round. And I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Mahalik to share science.
As you can see here, we're looking at the growth measures for the PSSA science assessment, and in 2023 compared to 2024, you can see that both grade levels did see an improvement in growth, which is fantastic. It is worth noting that in 2025, this spring, we are going to be having the field test related to the new steel standards. So this will be very interesting to see how it looks moving forward, but this is very clean the way that we're seeing it here. Both grade levels, again, saw improvement. When we take a look at the Keystone growth measures, now this is not cohorted. This reflects the test takers from last year. We can see that compared from 23 to 2024, algebra went up. So we were able to meet that growth measure according to the state. And then biology and literature, which is fantastic, both remained well above. Can't do much better than that. Looking at the subgroup data, in all but one of the subgroups, we saw that the Keystone algebra growth improved, which is definitely worth celebrating. Similarly, in literature, all but one of our subgroups showed that they either met, were above, or well above the growth goal. In biology, we saw that all of our subgroups were either met, were above, or were well above the growth measure set by the state of Pennsylvania. And at this point, I would like to turn it back over to Dr. Murphy, who's going to get into the comprehensive plan and really begin talking about how we're going to be responding to this data moving forward.
Good evening again. So after reviewing data, I think the question always becomes, well, now what? And that leads us nicely into our comprehensive plan. So tonight, we are very fortunately joined by members of our comprehensive planning team. This team spent the first semester analyzing data, asking tough questions, and developing some meaningful, measurable action steps. I'm going to hand things over to Mrs. Gruber, who will kick off this portion of our presentation.
Hi, my name is Evie Gruber. I have been a resident in the East Penn School District for 13 years. I have 4 kids in the district. I have a senior and a freshman at Emmaus High School. I have a 6th grader at Lower Macungie Middle School, and I have a 1st grader at West Coastville Elementary. Additionally, I work as a remedial assistant in Lower Macungie Middle School. This means that I am privileged to have viewpoints from both the parental and the instructional perspective. It also means that just like everyone here, I think this district is amazing, yet not above improvement. This led me to being part of the planning committee that is here today. And today this team will present our next comprehensive plan for the district. Such a plan is a state requirement that holds districts accountable for preparing students for college, careers, and life after graduation. Ultimately, our district uses this work to ensure we are consistently improving student outcomes. Mrs. Yensho will now explain how we structured this plan to keep it accountable and maintain actionable steps. So I thank you for being here, and I direct your attention to her.
Thank you, Mrs. Gruber, and good evening. Thank you for allowing us to share this information about our comprehensive plan with you this evening. As many of you know, I am Sally Yensho, principal of Lower Macungie Middle School. However, you may not know that I grew up in East Penn as well. I went to the old original Macungie School, Shoemaker Elementary, Eyre, and graduated from Emmaus High School in 1993. Now, I am a parent of the district for about 21 years, and my 2 children have graduated from Emmaus High School in 2022 and 2023. As a result of our previous comprehensive plan, our administrative team began engaging in the data step-back process. Through this work, we analyzed building-level data, disaggregated by subgroups, to identify trends and assess the effectiveness of all of our programs. As highlighted in the data portion of our presentation, there are areas to celebrate and, of course, areas needing targeted improvement. Each building collaborates with its school instructional leadership team, or our SILT team, to plan professional development and drive systemic changes. To maintain momentum and honor the work of our SILTs, we built upon the foundation of the previous comprehensive plan rather than starting over from scratch. Action steps from each building's plan were compiled and streamlined, revealing two primary themes. First, instruction and intervention, encompassing equitable instructional practices, equitable grading and assessment, and evidence-based instruction. And second, a culture for learning, focusing on trauma-informed supports, social-emotional learning, attendance improvement, and community engagement. You will see that these themes will guide our ongoing efforts to enhance student outcomes and strengthen our educational systems. Each theme tonight has one overarching goal and then various supporting metrics. Mr. Billman is going to come to the podium next to share our first goal with you.
Thank you, Mrs. Yancho. Good evening. My name is Michael Billman. I have been in East Penn for 2 years, and I am the technology director here at East Penn. Our first goal, as included on the slide, is aligned to our instruction and intervention theme. The goal reads, by ensuring students have access to rigorous, evidence-based core instruction and intervention, we will see an overall increase in our state data proficiency, including PSSA and Keystones, and/or overall growth in PVOS. We are looking for positive progress from the baseline set in the fall 2024 Future Ready Index. Work to achieve this goal is divided into 3 supporting categories: equitable practices, equitable grading and assessment, and evidence-based instruction. Mrs. Maddox is going to talk about the action steps aligned to the first category.
Good evening. I'm Taylor Maddox. I've worked in East Penn School District for 13 years, first as a special education teacher, now one of the supervisors of special ed. I also graduated from East Penn School District and now have a daughter at Shoemaker Elementary School. Over the past few years, we've implemented a comprehensive plan that focuses on equitable practices to promote inclusion in all of our learning spaces. At the district level, we've introduced clear expectations and accountability measures for evidence-based strategies, including learning walks, instructional rounds, and classroom walkthroughs. With the support of the board, we've also expanded access to both academic and behavioral interventions. Our growth data demonstrates the success of these initiatives, but they will require continued focus over the next 3 years to maintain and build on progress. At the building level, each school has developed plans to use common planning time for collaborative work around instruction and course materials with a strong emphasis on engagement. It's important to clarify that when we talk about engagement, we're not referring to flashy or superficial activities. Instead, we focus on developmentally appropriate lessons that require students to actively participate, not just passively observe. While our state testing data is the overarching goal for instruction and intervention, the state data is a lagging indicator. We will collect and analyze data from instructional rounds, learning walks, and classroom walkthroughs regularly. This multi-layer approach, district accountability, expanded interventions, and collaborative planning sets a solid foundation for continued growth and success. Ms. Rodriguez is going to talk through the next instruction intervention category.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tabitha Rodriguez, and I've been with the East Penn School District for 10 years. I currently serve as the assistant principal at Lower Macungie Middle School. To support continuous improvement and ensure consistency across our district, we've implemented several key practices aimed at strengthening instructional quality, student ownership, and assessment practices. First, professional learning communities, or PLCs, meet regularly to align instructional and assessment practices across classrooms and teachers. This helps ensure a shared understanding and consistent delivery of curriculum and assessments. We also involve students directly in data conversations where they set goals, celebrate their growth, and take ownership of their learning journey. To encourage meaningful participation, we've implemented incentives for universal screeners, fostering greater student engagement in the assessment process. At the classroom level, teachers administer common assessments by department or grade level and provide students with feedback that allows them to self-evaluate and reflect on their progress. Additionally, we offer small opportunities for small group reteaching through learning stations to address specific needs and reinforce key concepts. Looking ahead, our 3-year plan will focus on ensuring consistent grading and assessment expectations across the district. This includes clear policies around late work, makeup work, and second chance learning opportunities to provide all students with equitable access to success. Finally, we will analyze failure data to identify trends, create response plans, and follow up with students to ensure they receive the necessary support. These collective efforts will drive our ongoing commitment to student growth and achievement. I will turn it over to Mrs. Champion, who will now discuss evidence-based instruction. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Rebecca Champion, and I've been with East Penn School District for 11 years, and it's my second year serving as principal at Lincoln Elementary School. Our district is committed to using data-driven practices and collaboration to improve instruction and ensure equitable learning. Teachers participate in learning walks based on focus areas identified by our SILTs, or School Improvement Leadership Teams, and engage in monthly PLCs to set goals for student cohorts and ensure instructional materials are accessible. Both teachers and administrators take part in evidence-based professional development and annually evaluate Tier 1 programming during data retreats, using findings to strengthen instruction. Administrators also create master schedules with common planning time to ensure that core instruction is outside of our intervention blocks. And finally, SLOs are aligned with district and building goals through regular data checkpoints, and we are committed to UDL, or Universal Design for Learning, to meet the diverse needs of all students. For our active metrics, we rely on screening data and common assessments to guide decisions and monitor student progress. Administrators conduct regular classroom walkthroughs at all levels, providing feedback on instructional routines and curriculum use. Instructional specialists support teachers through coaching cycles aligned with evidence-based practices, proven instructional methods supported by research and data that improve student outcomes. These initiatives ensure a consistent, research-backed approach to student support and instructional excellence. We will now transition from our instruction and intervention theme to culture for learning. Our second goal focuses on our culture for learning theme, rooted in the belief that students need to be present and engaged in school to succeed, especially our secondary learners. This goal aims to create safe, engaging learning environments that foster a desire to attend school. By doing so, we aim for all schools to increase their building scores based on the statewide performance standard for attendance. To measure progress, we will use the state's Fall 2024 FRI, or Future Ready Index, as the baseline, ensuring our efforts are data-driven and aligned with statewide benchmarks. This goal reflects our commitment to cultivating a positive school culture that supports both attendance and learning success. Mrs. Shortle will share with you specifics of this goal.
Good evening. My name is Alyssa Shortall, and this is my 11th year in the East Penn School District. I currently serve as the instructional specialist at West Coastville Elementary School. To support our Culture for Learning goal, we've identified key metrics and strategies focused on student well-being and engagement. We will track professional development attendance and feedback to ensure staff are equipped with the tools to support students effectively. Additionally, we will analyze and share monthly SWIBs, or school-wide positive behavior interventions and supports, with K-8 staff to monitor progress and adjust strategies as needed. For our younger learners, K-5 classrooms and students and counselors will utilize the zones of regulation to help students develop emotional awareness and self-regulation skills. Across K-8, we will create and maintain calm-down spaces to provide students with safe areas to manage emotions. District-wide, we will expand our counseling opportunities and offer group sessions in partnership with organizations like the Valley Youth House and other community partners. These sessions will focus on themes such as emotional regulation and fostering a sense of belonging for all student subgroups. Finally, we will ensure behavioral multi-tiered system of supports, or MTSS, that process remains streamlined, offering greater support with fewer barriers, especially for students without IEPs. These initiatives are designed to create a supportive, inclusive environment that promotes both emotional well-being and academic success. Our commitment to educating the whole child continues to focus on social emotional learning, community building, and creating authentic learning opportunities that extend beyond academics. To enhance our SEL initiatives, we are considering the implementation of a new SEL survey. If adopted, this survey will provide data that each building can use to tailor appropriate programming. Our goal is to ensure consistent SEL programming across all levels, including weekly lessons, a common language, and visual supports throughout our school. To support this, teachers will receive training and feedback using defined look-fors that ensure SEL strategies are effectively implemented in classrooms. We'll also continue offering the new student mentoring program for grades 9 to 12, helping new students feel welcome and connected. Additionally, we'll maintain and refine our SWIBS program, ensuring it remains effective and responsive to student needs. Our supporting metrics will include monitoring behavior incidents and, if implemented, tracking growth over the baseline from the new SEL survey. These efforts underscore our dedication to fostering a holistic, supportive environment where students thrive, both emotionally and academically. I will now pass it on to Mrs. Gariello, who will discuss how we will prioritize attendance improvement as well as community engagement.
Hello, I'm Beth Gariello. It's a pleasure to see you all again, and I'm honored to serve as our students and staff as principal of Emmaus High School. To strengthen our culture for learning and support student success, we are prioritizing the consistent implementation of attendance policies and procedures district-wide. Clear expectations and effective communication are essential to fostering a shared understanding among students and parents. We are leveraging our internal resources, including counselors, student advisors, and social workers, to build stronger family connections and improve attendance through collaborative efforts that incorporate both school and community resources. Initiatives such as regular student attendance improvement conferences and personal plans, the use of KNS attendance services, truancy court, and the establishment of attendance-focused student support groups provide students with strategies to enhance their attendance. Additionally, we've introduced field trip guidelines to reduce missed class time, and we've restructured schedules to maximize instructional time. To motivate students and reinforce positive attendance habits, we continue to develop attendance incentives. For example, attendance plays a key role in earning privileges for events and schedule opportunities. Our communities and school site managers track monthly homeroom attendance, and prizes are awarded to the top 5 homerooms each month. Attendance also remains a priority in all of our weekly core team and MTSS meetings, where we analyze data, follow up with absent students and their families, and maintain transparency by keeping students informed about their attendance status. The district's attendance campaign can target the importance of attendance and provide actual attendance reports, linking attendance issues to student learning opportunities, literacy skill development, and high school graduation. Our efforts are supported by comprehensive metrics, tracking overall attendance data in addition to focusing on chronically absent students. This approach assures a complete understanding of attendance trends across all student populations. Through these strategies, we aim to create a culture that values consistent attendance, fostering both academic and personal growth for every student. As we strive to improve attendance, it's equally important to strengthen the connections between families and our schools. Engaged and informed families play a pivotal role in fostering a positive school culture and supporting student success both within and beyond the classroom. This brings us to our next priority, enhancing family and community engagement. It's been emphasized that family and community involvement directly linked to student learning has a significantly greater impact on achievement than more general forms of engagement. To be effective, these efforts must focus on improving student outcomes by actively involving families in developing specific knowledge and skills. To strengthen these connections, we will host family-themed nights and parent engagement series to foster stronger home-school relationships. Topics could address a wide range of practical and meaningful areas. Topics could aim to equip students and families with the tools and knowledge necessary to fully leverage their educational opportunities available within the East Penn School District. In addition, we will engage community volunteers in various activities. At the K-5 level, volunteers will assist with supporting stations, recess, and school stores. At the secondary level, community and family members will serve as guest speakers, lunch and learn hosts, panel experts, and volunteers for a variety of initiatives. We will also expand opportunities for community involvement by increasing participation in committees such as the Federal Program Stakeholders Committee and Improvement Plan committees. Beyond academics, we remain committed to fostering initiatives that enhance the overall well-being of our students through broader community engagement. To evaluate our efforts, we will track attendance at community events to measure the success of our initiatives. This comprehensive approach will ensure our schools remain deeply connected with families and the wider community, building a strong and sustainable support system that enriches both the educational experience and personal development of every student. And now, Dr. Thatcher.
So in summary, we hope you're taking away that our comprehensive plan really is focused on creating a supportive, inclusive, and engaging environment for all students in our school district. And so we continue to look forward to refining and further developing our efforts as we work toward improving our student outcomes at East Penn. So we thank you for your time and attention tonight, and now we're going to open the floor for questions and comments.
Okay, everybody catch your breath. Well, first off, thank you very much for the very thorough presentation. Obviously, there was a lot of content there. I'm very interested to hear what my colleagues have to say in terms of their comments and questions. Before I turn it over to my colleagues, I would just first like to say that, I find the proficiency and growth data to be highly encouraging. I am impressed with where we stand. Obviously, we're doing well, but there's still areas where we can improve. And I'd like to think that the many actions that we've discussed over the last few years are bearing fruit and bringing our students to where they need to be, and giving credit to them and giving credit to our professional staff, our overall staff, and our administrators for putting that together. In terms of the comprehensive plan, thank you very much to the diverse team that met last fall to assemble the plan itself. I actually was part of that those discussions, and I found them illuminating for myself to understand what it is that goes on in the district, and all the thinking and the planning and then the data and everything that goes into trying to pull a plan like this together. So again, grateful for that work. So now I'd like to turn it over to my colleagues for comments and questions. Ms. Ford.
Just a comment. First, a thank you for the presentation, and I had the pleasure of serving on this committee. And so I just want to say that we are very fortunate to have such a dedicated group of individuals that would take time out to participate in this and share their thoughts, and it was very insightful. I felt like I learned so much from what was shared in the groups, and I particularly also appreciated the student representative who I got to meet and hear from. So thank you all for the hard work. It is greatly appreciated, seeing firsthand all that went into the creation of the plan, and I feel like I know all the acronyms now.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Ford. Additional comments? Mr. Smith?
Ironically, in all of my fluency in acronyms, it took me forever to figure out what the heck DW means. District-wide, for anybody who's figured that out tonight. Little context clues looking at the presentation. No, but seriously, though, this was fantastic. I found myself, and I imagine a few of my colleagues up here as well, found myself like looking at this and being like, finally, let's go. Like this is what we have been working towards, building towards. So thanks to all of you. Thanks obviously for putting together the plan, the presentation tonight, but really thanks to every single person that is a fixture in all of our schools for making this happen. This is not one person. This is not one group of people. This is every single adult that works in a building and all the kids for working as hard as they did. So kudos to everyone. I'm not going to go into too much detail in terms of questioning and things like that. There were a couple of things that jumped out at me that I was like, well, you know, I'm pretty familiar with a lot of the things that are in here, and some of these things we do already. But one of the things a couple of things I was happy to see that were included in there with the equitable grading and assessment practices. I think it was under that one. So the late work and the second chance learning, I thought a policy revamp there. I'm glad to see that in there. Something that I personally have seen a need for. Never really thought it was something that would rise to a level of a comp plan action item, but certainly something that I'm glad to see in there. I think I've had, and from a district-wide standpoint too, it's not just a high school focused, high school lens where my kids are right now, but I've had conversations with teachers of my own kids throughout their years here in East Penn, where the Portrait of a Graduate skills did not necessarily always line up with what we saw taking place in terms of second chance learning and turning in late work and stuff like that. So that I'm glad that was in there. And then the one thing I was hoping somebody could speak a little bit more to that I'm curious as to where we might be headed with this one. I forget what slide it's on, so I apologize. But the educational field trips over breaks. I'm curious what that might look like, what that entails. If we've given it, we don't need to go into the weeds. I'm just curious what initial thoughts we might have on that one.
It's a work in progress, but we have started to really examine, it's a work in progress, and we have started to really examine and critique requests. Now, at the high school level, I can't speak for other levels, we certainly have a lot of field trips. But we have put rails on the guidelines as far as what days, how many chaperones in terms of losing instructional staff. So we've put some different things in place where we're denying field trips, not entirely, but within certain windows. We're encouraging weekend field trips, and we are certainly limiting the number of staff that can leave to attend a field trip at once, because those students that are still in the building need their teachers. So it's not where we want it to be yet. That's why it's part of the plan. But we definitely have started this year in particular to really put some guide rails on the number and the substance. And the field trips must be aligned, and the justification must be aligned with the curriculum.
Great. Thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Kelly?
I had three main questions. My first one is, when you talk about students being active participants in the classroom and the engagement,
Could you repeat that?
When you're talking about students being actively engaged or active participants, could you explain what that would look like?
Are you referencing the active participants in data conversations? Was that the action step?
So through your comprehensive plan, the idea that the students are actively participating in the learning process, just what would that look like for a student?
Oh, well, that's broadly speaking, that they're attentive to the instruction, they're interested in the instruction, that we're able to include them in those data conversations, that they have that type of ownership and understanding in general, I'd say. It probably looks different depending on what grade level or content you're talking about, but at the, I would say, the very most basic level that students are interested, they're excited, and they're participating and showing results.
Okay. My second question is, there are a lot of references to common assessments, and I was wondering where that data is available to the administrators. Like, how can you guys view those common assessment data points?
So common assessments might, again, be different based on the grade level or the subject area. Administrators at the building level, at the central office level, in the Office of Teaching and Learning, in the Office of Special Ed, we're typically part of things like PLCs or Tier 1 data meetings where we're reviewing that information with teachers, whether that's on a monthly basis or whether that's on a trimester basis or a quarterly or semester basis, depending on the level where we're having those discussions. Sometimes it happens during the department meetings or on district PD days. But typically, depending on what it is, it may or may not have a grade attached to it. So if it does have a grade, it's something you can see in a grade book. Otherwise, it might be something that is not necessarily weighted for a grade, but is used as a point of reflection for teachers as they're looking at the effectiveness of their instruction and assessments.
So there's no way for you, aside from a grade book, to, and I say this because the common assessments are a great tool for even might be better than observations for coming up with a value score of how the instruction is. But there's no way for you to be able to view that aside from looking at a grade book.
Well, we're part of in the Office of Teaching and Learning, in conjunction with the buildings and the department chairs and the teachers, part of the development of that during the curriculum writing process. That's stage 2. And so typically that's something that within each of our departments, we're well aware of what they are. Building leaders, though, who might not have been part of that particular development process are also still well aware of what they are, as they're part of all those different conversations.
Okay. All right. The common assessments themselves, they're standard throughout the different buildings and the teachers.
Yes. So they're standard across a course or a grade band, and that's something that we really had to push toward. I want to say 2 or 3 years ago at this point, was aligning everything so that it was truly common.
Okay. My last question was just, I saw in the instruction and intervention, one of the slides was talking about building background knowledge and vocabulary acquisition. And I was wondering if you could speak to how you might do that in a science and a math class.
Sure. So this is something that we're really excited about. K-12 with the science of reading and our Keys to Literacy professional development lifts. So this, as we have rolled this out, I think the middle level is in their second year and the high school is in their first year. And I can't speak for what year elementary is in. Science of reading, yeah. 2? 4. Okay, so the 4th year at the elementary level. All content areas are responsible for teaching literacy. So not just English and ELA teachers are our teachers of literacy. All teachers need to have ownership of that. And so there's specific training, that's precise training for our teachers in all content areas to be taught how to do that within their specific areas. And that is something you also may have heard, like walkthroughs, learning walks, that sort of thing. That's a way that we're looking to see how it's implemented. There are coaching components that come alongside of it, not necessarily only from an administrator, but from peer experts who are doing a really good job, from instructional specialists, from instructional coaches. So there are a variety of people that then, I don't want to say check the implementation because it is a learning experience, but they're there to kind of go alongside and support that rollout as all of our content areas learn how they can integrate literacy and that sort of vocabulary instruction into their content area.
And what about the higher levels, the middle school and the high school?
They are Keys to Literacy.
Keys to Literacy.
Yep. So they're in the middle school's in year 2 and the high school's in year 1. And just because of the sheer size of our high school, it's a multi-year rollout. So our humanities department, we started with them just because they do have some background and expertise in that area. So they were trained in the key comprehension day 1 and 2. This spring, they will start the vocabulary routine day 1. There will be a day 2 in August. And then next March, they will then start the key writing routine day 1, and then the following August, day 2. So they will have then all 6 days of training for the 3 different keys to support the literacy. The vocabulary is just really the one key, although it is embedded into things like writing and comprehension. So that's where that training comes in. And then it's supported by the building throughout the year, not just on the professional development days.
All right, you can see the slide.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kelly. Was there a question over here?
Sure.
Dr. Wiggins.
I have a microphone in front of me. Thank you. So, well, first of all, I mean, sincere congratulations on the numbers that you've presented here. Truly worthy of celebration. And as my colleagues have said, none of that happens without a huge effort on the part of many, many people. So, I mean, it's really an achievement, something to celebrate. And thank you for all the hard work that went into that. So I have a couple questions. They're not necessarily connected to one another, but I guess I'll start with, I want to dig a little more into the universal design for learning, because that's mentioned here. It's mentioned that faculty participate in UDL. I mean, I'm not expert in UDL, but I know that it's with all due respect, it's not really something that you just sort of say, we're doing it. You really have to do it. It has to be kind of a concerted effort to apply it. And also, related to that, you know, the principles of UDL, and I'm curious how you see those aligning with and working with the principles of equitable grading and common assessments and those kinds of things. Because on the one hand, you're talking about a system of education that allows for multiple options of assessment, multiple options of learning and perception, and multiple options of achievement. And then on the other hand, you're talking about, you know, making sure that we're standardizing more, making sure that all the teachers are assessing in a common way. And it's not that those two things can't coexist, but I would love to hear, and I'm not sure who I'm directing this question to, whoever wants to step up and answer it. But I guess as much as anything, I would love to hear how you perceive UDL being utilized in the district and what that really means.
As you've accurately observed, the very beginning stages. So this was certainly something that was dabbled in our first comprehension plan and rose to, or not our first, it was our team's first comprehensive plan together. This is our second. So something we dabbled in initially, but has risen to the top as an absolute focus. So our action steps moving forward for the next 3 years is to really invest in additional professional development and development of our UDL practices. So you're right, we're in the beginning stages and we have more work to come and more professional development on that.
Okay, so this is a goal. This is something that we see expanding throughout
Yes,
the
this is an
district?
action step moving forward.
Okay, great. And then maybe related, but kind of dig in a little more to this idea of student active participation, student engagement. You made the comment that, well, it depends on the grade level. You know, I think there's just, you know, and again, say this with all respect that I'm not an educator, but I am familiar with some of the research more recently that suggests there's great value in allowing for more student agency at the youngest levels, and really having students take an active role in what they're learning, not dictating what they're learning, not necessarily, you know, free for all, not that at all, actually. But how do we see helping our teachers create environments in the classroom where students at all grade levels really are allowed to take ownership of their education, not just participation. You know, you can say, well, students are participating, they're asking questions, you know, yes, that shows engagement. But at the end of the day, that's not the same as saying that the students are really taking ownership of their learning. And I think, you know, when you look at our portrait of a graduate, that is the skill that we want them to have, right? We want them to be, we say, self-directed learners. And I think there's a lot to say about having classroom environments, and I think this needs to be where we ultimately want to get, where it's not just about, well, I achieved a data goal, which is wonderful and a nice thing, but it also has to be about, you know, I, as a student, come through, you know, and I really understood why I was learning what I was learning, and I had some ownership and agency in the classroom. So that's maybe more of a comment than a question, but if anybody wants to respond to that and talk about how agency and engagement in the classroom, how you really see it working in a long-term way, I would love to hear.
So I'm going to step up for my team and talk about this because I think most of you have been on this journey with us. And I think one of the things that a lesson we learned from COVID is, and when you see like evidence-based instruction up there and balancing that with UDL, because you made a fine point, like those are diametrically sometimes opposed things when you're talking fairness and the idea of giving kids options. I think what we learned from COVID is that we had to make sure we were nailing down the basics. And for some of the cohorts of kids, we had to go back and get those basics in place. And so agency became like a backseat to making sure that those basics were covered. So now I think we're here, and now we're going to be able to keep going down that road. But we really had to hit the pause button and make sure that everyone had this prerequisite skills to be able to execute that agency and be successful.
Thank you. Great. And, please understand, this is by no means like attacking or challenging, right? I'm just, I feel very strongly about this, as an educator, not in K-12, but in a different setting. But, we know that the post-COVID student, they want to know why they're learning things. And that is really, as much as anything, the number one factor to whether they're fully engaged in their education. So as much as we can do that, but I'm really glad to hear that that's the track that we're on, and that's the pathway that we're on. So thank you, and I'll yield the floor.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Whitney. Ms. Bowman.
Yes, thank you. Arguably, I should know more than I do about this since I was on the committee, but I had to miss probably more than half of the meetings. At one point on slide, I think it's 26, where you were talking about math at 8th grade that was well below the growth standard, and you said that what we were doing about it was going to come up later. Is what we were doing about it the plan, or is it something specific in the plan?
Sure, that's a good question. So if I'm speaking transparently, it's a comprehensive process that's going to be supported or is being supported by a variety of stakeholders at all levels. So it's not something that one person or one group is doing or that is just in the plan. And if I'm being honest, it's things that have already been in place in some cases and some are new action steps that will continue to be in place. But I did summarize just some of the steps that were mentioned in the comprehensive plan that directly would support that. So the rigorous evidence-based programming, the learning walks, the instructional rounds, the classroom walkthroughs, the intervention being in addition to core. And intervention has been a big thing for us over the last several years. The MTSS process rolling and things like that, particularly at the upper levels, PLCs that are running in buildings that align to instruction and assessment, the common planning time for teachers, having those tier 1 data meetings with teachers, having that constant recursive conversation about where are we, where are our kids at, what are we doing, what are we seeing, coming back to that, setting goals. So that constant monitoring, and then of course including our students in those conversations, and then coaching cycles is something that happens as well to support that, whether it's for new teachers or seasoned teachers. And particularly in 8th grade, we've had a lot of movement over the last several years, maybe 2 to 3 years. We've had new teachers almost every year, which has proven to be challenging when we're looking at like fidelity of implementation of programming, and some of our teachers are brand new. So we're very lucky to have people who are very bright-minded in math and they're still sort of perfecting their craft in terms of a lot of other things. So those are just some of the ways that we're supporting not only the students but also the teachers as we work to improve that. And again, just while it was well below the growth target, it's probably a matter of like 2% proficiency points. It was not like a large drop.
Okay. Yeah, it's just that you mentioned it was coming up later.
Yes.
I wasn't sure which part.
Just embedded within the action steps.
Okay.
But thank you for
Thank
asking.
you. I appreciated many of the parts of the plan that were already talked about, especially many parts of it, but also the issue with the field trips is something I noticed a long time ago, and I'm glad it's finally being addressed. I mean, on the one hand, it's wonderful that our students have the opportunity to go to Europe for a week or wherever, But on the other hand, not all students can afford that or raise money, $8,000 or $10,000 to go on these trips, and it's not fair to them to not have that class for a whole week when their classmates are overseas. So I'm happy that you're trying to find some fairness in that situation. And then really happy to see that you're offering some of these MTSS supports to kids who maybe are in the process of getting an IEP, or maybe their families don't know about that process, which I think is really common. We have a lot of kids who are undiagnosed but need support, so I'm happy that you're doing that. And many of these other measures that you've already talked about. One thing that I thought could help for the future for the board, it definitely would help me in understanding the presentation, in 3 years when you're back here, and I won't be here, but maybe the other board members will benefit. If you could maybe color code this to show us what's already happening, because there's a lot on here that's already in place versus what's new and versus what's like part of the old plan that you're continuing forward, but maybe it isn't fully implemented yet. That would help us to know, like, I think as board members, we're mostly zeroing in on the new stuff. But it's also helpful to know, like, we're continuing these measures because they're working. That's helpful to know as well. But as someone who no longer has a child in the system, it's not as easy for me to separate those things on my own without your help. So I would have appreciated that. But overall, I think great job, and really happy to see the district moving forward.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Bowen. Any additional comments from the board? Mr. Jankowski.
Thanks. Just one kind of question / comment. First, I echo the comments from my colleagues. Great work. It's nice to see the numbers creeping up and seeing a positive trend. The one concern I have, which I think you're addressing, and Ms. Bowman, kind of to what she was saying too, is it's that middle of the road student that concerns me the most. The students that aren't necessarily showing deficiencies, but maybe aren't getting it. Like, they're getting by, but they're not. There's no alarms going off that they necessarily need help until the later years when they do. When it they might do great in elementary, or they might do well in 6th grade, but then they get into, like Algebra 1, or maybe their reading comprehension isn't as strong as it was, or as strong as grades had shown in prior grades. And I think, those are the students that are going to really help our numbers, our proficiency, our growth. And it's a tall task. What's being done to help develop our teachers to be able to look out for this, that like signs that they can notice, or trends or habits or something, because I think those are the students that are getting lost, and it could be a C student that has the potential to be a B student, an A student. Their silent deficiencies aren't being identified until it's too late, if that makes sense.
I think that's a great question. We were just sidebarring over there. As far as I can say for like K to 5, and then I think as well 6 through 8, technology really is helping teachers compared to when I was in the classroom. When we're talking about our iReady program, teachers after the diagnostic, they can look at something called a prerequisite report, and they can see, based on their initial assessment, where there are specific needs, they can do small group instruction. And we actually did some professional development with our teachers to create like a 5-day planner of, okay, this is where your kids were, and these groups of kids need help with fractions. These kids are still kind of stuck with some number sense issues. So it identifies their areas of need so that teachers during small group instruction or our I&E blocks can support those students that may not be in an intense intervention. And then secondly, we have Core 5 and Lexia, which is kind of the partner to math. that also does that work for us as well. That will hone in on specific skills that are needed, if it's phonics-based or if it's comprehension-based. We are working, and we have more work to do on helping teachers look at the skill builders, which come with that do the same work, and then during small group instruction to support all kids.
Great. Yeah, no, I think Lexi is great. In fact, my youngest told us we needed a second refrigerator to keep putting up all the certificates because we ran out of space on one. So if you can make them smaller, that would be a lot.
Noted.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jankowski. Any additional comments or questions?
Can I
Mr. Kelly?
add to that conversation? I saw references to the professional development and the video for the student AI help, and that's something too, like Conmingo and the different photo math and things like, AI generated is going to be the future of education. And I guess I would ask, at what point are at the beginning of the year, we talked about professional development for the teachers for different AI programs. I'm wondering if that has happened or when that will happen.
Sure, it's actually in the process right now. Our teachers are participating in a flipped professional development experience over the next few months regarding their initial AI training, which is sort of just like the start. And then there is specific training that's also getting pushed out to our students about how and when they should be utilizing AI. So we're definitely in the beginning stages of ensuring that there's like common practices across our grade levels, and that also students know when it is appropriate to use AI at this time. And to your point, it is consistently evolving. So I think that we as a team and our tech department know that we're going to have to keep evolving too. So we feel like we have a really good plan right now, and we're probably going to have to revisit it by next year.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you for the question. Anything else? Okay, well, truly appreciate the discussion that my colleagues with their comments and questions, and of course appreciate the work of the team to put forth this comprehensive plan. So at this point, I think we should look forward to the public comment period and see what we get back, and then sometime perhaps towards the end of February, this will come back before the board for approval. If there's nothing else, then we will move on to the next item on the agenda. Thank you.
I also just want to echo Dr. Levinson and the other board members' sentiments regarding our appreciation to the team that was here tonight, as well as the larger team that you represent, who helped us to do an amazing job of looking back and saying, what are we doing well, and what are areas for continued growth and improvement for us, and then again being part of that plan to help us continue to move forward. And especially thank you for being here this evening and for the great presentation and responses to the questions and feedback from the board. And certainly appreciate that there's a large group of you here, and I know that you are all welcoming our students in just a few hours, and certainly recognize if you need to step out. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Campbell. Thank you, board. Okay, now moving on. Next item in the agenda is policy. We have third reading of our current policies and adoption. It's my understanding that there were no changes from second reading. If there are no further comments from the administration on that, I'd like to take a motion from the board to approve.
So moved. Second.
Any comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, Ms. Allen, please call the roll.
Ms. Klotz?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Dr. Whitney?
Aye.
Ms. Bowman?
Aye.
Ms. Ford?
Aye.
Mr. Jankowski?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Levinson?
Aye.
8 ayes.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Other educational entities, our first report will be from Mr. Smith for LCTI.
Thank you, Dr. Levinson. The Joint Operating Committee of LCTI met on December 11th. During the meeting, we first held our reorganization meeting where we took a vote, and the president and vice president, Carol Facciano from Parkland and Audrey Matheson from Allentown respectively, were reelected into their positions from the year prior. The Educator of the Year award was presented to Dr. Heather Mariotti for her work in the healthcare program. In order to be considered for the award, nominees needed to demonstrate teaching excellence, innovative educational practices, have a high impact on student learning, make broad contributions to the school community, have led professional development, and made connections and contributions to local businesses and work-based education. We were also lucky to host renowned engineer and educator James Hansel. He and his wife shared their vision for a trust that they intend to establish that will support LCTI in its mission for years to come. Administration shared the status of various grant applications, including the successful purchase of a digital human body called Anatomage. And I did not write down how I wanted to describe this particular piece of technology because it truly defied all description for my colleagues that were there at the meeting. They would probably say the same. It is a digital table that is wider than that TV there. It can lay down flat as if it was an operating table, and it can also tilt straight up vertically so you can see a digital representation of a person who was once alive, and it is a way to bring that same sort of idea of into their healthcare programming of anatomy and physiology and healthcare practices, and I don't know if they use it for like a digital autopsy kind of a thing, but that is a new piece of technology that they had, and they had it, brought it into the meeting, and they chose not to present it to anybody during the course of the meeting itself, giving people a time who were kind of creeped out by the digital man on the screen with very little clothing on, time to leave the meeting before they had a demonstration at the end of the meeting. I did not stay around for the demonstration at the end, in case you were wondering. In less exciting news, we also heard an update to the planning process around creating a secure vestibule at the entrance of the building. We saw a basic schematic of what they are looking to do. The National Technical Honor Society induction was held at El-Tri-C on December 17th, where 118 students were inducted. And finally, best of luck to our LCTI students as they compete in this year's Skills USA District 11 competition, which will be held from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. on January 22nd at the Agriplex Center at the Allentown Fairgrounds. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Are there any comments or questions from the board? Okay, thank you again, Mr. Smith. From Dr. Whitney, a report on CLIU.
Thank you, Dr. Levinson. This is the CLIU board meeting that took place on December 19th. Fairly brief report, a couple of items of note. One is we reapproved the general operating budget for the coming year. This was due to adjustment in medical and prescription premium rates. Bottom line, we reapproved that budget and it did not affect the district contributions, so that will still come up before the district in future months for approval. We approved 5 new speech therapist positions, 3 of which will be dedicated to early intervention services. This is a severe backlog. Currently 60 students are on a wait list in early intervention. And so 3 of those 5 positions will serve those students and help them get the supports that they need. Those 3 positions will be funded by early intervention state funding for the upcoming fiscal year. And the remaining 2 were just at the request of districts. Again, with anticipated growth and need in these speech therapist positions, having these extra positions will help serve more students, reduce wait times, and meet all the district requests in that area. The Carbon Lehigh Special Needs Children's Foundation Holiday Raffle raised nearly $4,700, which is an increase over last year and a great result for that annual fundraiser for the foundation of the CLIU. And then finally, we approved 2 to maintain the Board of Directors for CLIU at 14 members, one for each district, and also approve to continue electing those board members by mail ballot rather than holding a convention, so continuing the current practice and makeup of the board. And that is my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Whitney. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Okay, thank you again for that report, Dr. Whitney. Moving on to announcements, we had an executive session this evening where we discussed topics related to litigation and other confidential matters. The district will be closed on Monday, January 20th, 2025. Our next regular board meeting will be on Monday, January 27th, so in 2 weeks. And with no further business, I'd like to get a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Meeting adjourned. Have a good night.